Welcome to this video where I'll be providing an overview of our Advanced Automation suite. Within this suite, you'll see how Halcyon can become your eyes and ears of the system, a tool invaluable to operators, assisting in day-to-day management of your IBM I. So let's take a look at the Advanced Automation suite. As you can see from the main menu, as soon as you enter the product using Go Halcyon, you have the section here which is the different components within the Advanced Automation suite. So this is your Message Manager, Message Communicator, System Event Manager, Performance Analyzer, Spool File Manager, Audit Journal Monitor, which is actually monitoring the audit journal in real time, Restricted Task Manager, and finally the Disk Space Manager. So we'll have a quick overview of each of these components, but what we'll do is we will start at the top and work our way down. So if I take option 1, Display Message Log, within here this is all the messages that are relating to Halcyon itself. So there'll be system messages and also you'll see maintenance messages added within here. It's a great place to come and take a look to see if there's if you're experiencing perhaps network issues. It will be reported within the message log. It will also warn you if any of your maintenance keys are due to expire. That can also be found within here as well. Work with Alert Log. This is where all your active alerts will be registered for the system. You can take option 7, which will enable you to view any messages relating to that particular alert. So that's the same as taking the option 1, where you can display the message log, but it's just specific messages to that alert. Option 9 will enable you to reply to an alert only if it's been generated from an inquiry message. 10 is so that you can close alerts. Option 11 is very helpful. It enables you to omit alerts from its rule in the future. So rather than you having to come in here, you find that there's an alert that's been raised. You don't want to see that alert again, so rather than having to come out of this screen, going into the work with rules, trying to find your rule, by the time you've done all that, it's just as easy just to do an option 11. Option 13 will show you the action history, so whatever actions we put against the rule, it will show what's been performed. So this is just actually creating a local console alert. You can do a message count, option 14. That will show you how many messages have appeared. That's only valid for messages on message queues. And that will show you how many messages have appeared, so that you have the detail available to see how Halcyon is managing the messages coming from your system. Option 18 enables you to acknowledge the alert, and what that means is you may have multiple actions that essentially escalates the actions that are going to be performed. So it may be that you're the first to receive notification of that alert, so you may need to cancel the escalation of the remaining alerts, and you can do that using option 18 to acknowledge. A quick shortcut into looking at the rule for an alert that's been raised is option 20. And you take option 20 and it will take you directly into that rule. So if you need to make amendments, you can go in and you can make changes directly from within this screen. F12, you come back out. F23 shows you that you have a few more options where you can use 26 to release a rule or 27 to hold a rule. Again, it's just shortcuts so that you don't have to come out of this work with alert log and then go off and find the rule. You can just do it directly from this point. Work with monitors, option 3. This is where we control all our monitors, and for a default installation, the Halcyon subsystem normally will be Z Hal Prod. These jobs are spawned, and these are the monitors. So these sit looking over your IBM I, looking to detect when the audit journal is written to, for example. If you have job queue monitoring, making sure that no more than, for example, 10 jobs are sitting in a job queue. You may be monitoring for spool files, wanting to pick up any spool files that appear on a certain output queue and then PDF them and send them to either the NFS, the IFS, or a window share via QNTC. You'll notice that there's a column here called SUP. What this is it enables you to supervise individual monitors, and you'll see we've actually got all our monitors supervised here. When you start this top monitor, the monitor supervisor, its purpose is to sit in the control end subsystem and ensure that all of your monitors and the Halcyon subsystem are always actively running. So if for any reason someone came in onto the system and ended this HEM dev job because they felt that it was they didn't know what it was, so they ended it, because that's critical to your monitoring and your advanced automation, the monitor supervisor on its cycle will detect that it's not running, and it will automatically start that job again for you. If you need to put Halcyon into a maintenance mode, then you can easily just stop this monitor supervisor job and then end the Halcyon subsystem. Beyond the supervisor, you have the status of the monitor, the current function that the monitor's in, and the percentage of that job, how busy that job is. So you can use the option to end, to start, to supervise, stop supervising, hold or release any of the monitors. And if I just page down, you'll see there's some additional ones at the bottom. Each job that's spawned by Halcyon has the same name as the monitor, so if you do a workout job and see these jobs, you can just marry them up with a description in the Work with Monitor screen. So all those monitors, once they're started, they're actively going to sit and work to the rules that you create, and those rules are the specific system monitoring or advanced automation that you want to apply to your IBM I. So by going into Work with Rules, you'll see we have an instant overview of the different components within the Advanced Automation Suite and the current status of those components. I can use F11, which will expand out a single component. So by pressing F11 on the message queue, this shows me the message queues that are currently being monitored by Halcyon, and I can come in, place my cursor against the QSysOpera message queue, press F6, and that will enable me to go in and add myself a new rule for my message monitoring. And that's ever so straightforward. You just create a sequence number and give it a description. You can be specific in the message type, whether you want to look for messages that have received, or even better, not received, when it comes to examples such as backups. When the monitor is going to be active, so this is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and the number of messages that need to occur within a time frame. And if you see in the top right hand corner, I'm currently on page 1 of 2, but if I use the page down key, that will enable me to go down to the next part of the rule, which enables me to go in and I can choose to select or omit message IDs, or I can leave it generic. If I wanted to be specific, I can put in here CPA 5305 for example, and if I page down, I can then add in where the message data field &1 in the message text is equal to Halcyon. So if I press enter, that will create my selection. So once you've added the select for the message ID, you just need to navigate into the actions pane, press F6, and these are the actions that you want Halcyon to perform once that message has been detected on the message queue. And there's plenty of actions available. We can run an action schedule, so for example, If it's during business hours, an alert has arrived on the message queue, then you may choose to have the action where the alert is sent to the Enterprise Console, because there will be operators watching the Enterprise Console and they'll be able to react to that alert. If, however, the message appears on the message queue outside of business hours, then you may want to have an action of sending an email or an SMS text to a mobile phone so that people can be alerted out of hours. And those decisions can be made within this action schedule. We can send console alerts to the Enterprise Console. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Enterprise Console, it's a Windows-based application. It's a single window where we can direct all the alerts from all your IBM I's, your AIX systems, Linux and Windows, all go into one central location. So rather than you having to sign on to different systems and different LPARs, everything all gets fed into one place. Because we're talking about the Advanced Automation Suite, we tend to, when we create rules, we tend to have proactive automation. So rather than sending out loads of alerts that somebody has to deal with, we like to be able to put in automation so that Halcyon becomes intelligent and does the work that an operator would normally do. And following on from that, an example of how you can automate this rule that I'm adding is we can choose the reply action. So what we can say is, if it comes up with member file full, and I know that this particular member, Halcyon, normally I can respond by incrementing by 50, and that normally resolves the issue. I can add in this action to say, okay, I'm going to reply with an increment of 50, so that will always increment by 50. Now there are some other actions that we can add in place here to ensure that we're not always incrementing files by 50. We'd probably put another step action in which then tells somebody if the message appears again. It can send an alert out to the Enterprise Console, just alerting operators that normally an increment of 50 solves the problem, but it hasn't this time, so maybe an operator needs to be involved. But we're taking that first step out. And that's how you create a rule. And this is a very simple rule that's created over the message queue. So I'm just going to press enter, and you'll see that my rule is added, and the same can be applied if I just use F11 just to shrink the message queue up. The same can be applied to all these components that you see within the screen here. The TCP/IP monitor enables you to ping devices on your network. As we all know, the IBM I is probably one of the most stable systems that you have within your environment, so it makes sense to use the IBM I to check that your email server is active or your main router is pingable, and that's what the TCP/IP monitor does. It sends out a ping request to devices of your choice, and it waits for the response back, and if it receives the response expected, it's a successful ping. If, however, it doesn't receive the response expected, then what action would you like Halcyon to perform? Maybe pop it out to an Enterprise Console so that an operator can view it. You might choose to use an action schedule, so during the day it goes to the Enterprise Console, and during out of hours it goes to the on-call operator. So F11, again, just expanding and collapsing all the time. With the output queue monitor, where you have existing output queues, you can add in the output queue. Use F6 to add output queue. You can specify the check interval, how often you want Halcyon to check that output queue, and what do you want Halcyon to check. If I come into this user output queue, press F6 to create a new rule, specify when you want that output queue to be monitored, and when the rule is triggered, we can put it to sleep using this suspend. So if you're monitoring for the status of the output queue, and the output queue should always be in release writer status. You may not want to be alerted every minute that that output queue isn't in the status you expect. So by using that suspend, we can put the rule to sleep, maybe for 15 minutes. It just gives you that time to go off, investigate why the output queue isn't in the status you expect it to be, and then the rule will come out of the sleep mode and continue monitoring again. There's 3 different rule types within the output queue. We have depth, so how many spool files on the output queue. We have spool file, so we can actually monitor for spool file as per this selection. And status, as you already seen, so the status of the output queue. What you want to do when the rule has been triggered, again you choose your action. It may be that if the output queue isn't detected as being released and active, that you choose to use one of our other action types. So you may choose that you want to try and release the output queue or start the printer writer. So for all the actions that we provide that make sense to the rules that you're adding, for those actions that we don't provide, you can always take the command action and add your own command in. So looking at the device monitor, this does what you would expect. It enables you to monitor devices. So the examples that we give is you want to check that your Ethernet lines on the IBM I are varied on and active, or you may want to check that your tape drive is active before the backup runs. If the tape drive isn't active, what do you want Halcyon to do? Do you want Halcyon to try and vary that device on, or do you want to send an alert out to the operator? We can do a combination of all of that. You can see here our examples using an action schedule, but if I use F6 and F4 again, we can use the vary on action type here, and it just means that we pass substitution variables, so it's going to vary on the whatever objects we're checking. So this will pass TAP01, the configuration type that we're going to pass to it using these substitution variables, and these substitution variables come from this F16 option here. So once you've added in the action, again just press enter, and that's your rule added. It's for these ones that are held, so I'd have to release this rule, and as soon as I released it, that rule becomes active. So if we take a look at the next one, job queues, this is able to look at 3 different types of monitoring. Check whether a job queue is ready. We can check to see whether there's a set number of jobs on that job queue, indicating perhaps a backlog of jobs, and whether jobs on that queue, so say you had jobs on queue batch that run there for more than 30 minutes within your environment, that's probably a huge issue, so we can alert you to that as well. Within the performance rules, if we take a look at the examples here, we can tell you whether the ASP is over a certain threshold, whether average responses are over a certain period, so for example greater than a second. If I just do an F6 and expand out the performance rules, I'll just give a description here and page down. There's different rule types that we can select within the performance rules. So we can check for your ASP, disks, job, pool, subsystem or system. So if we take ASP for example, we can choose different statistics that we want to monitor for the ASP. It may be the overflow size, it may be the overflow percentage, the system usage percentage or the used percentage. So if we go for used percentage, we then have the comparison and the value. So if I was to enter on this, Halcyon would alert you if your ASP used percentage was greater than 90%. Now typically we recommend that you set up 3-step ASP performance rules. You have one rule that's going to trigger at 90%, one rule at 87% and one rule at 85%. That way, if you receive in quite a short space of time an alert for each of those 3 thresholds, you know that something is taking up your storage very, very quickly. If we take a look at some of these other options that are available, we can monitor your disks, so we can check to see how busy they are and have a comparison. We can do by all disks and all ASPs or individual numbers. Let's take a look at the next one, so jobs. The job rule type has quite comprehensive performance criteria that you can select. So you can select specific job names. You can do it by user subsystem. The job type non-SBS means that it won't include the subsystem in the selection criteria. And then you have loads and loads of statistics that you can monitor on. So it may be specific CPU for a job, it may be making sure that the active job exists, it may be that you want to look at the job status, making sure it's not gone message way. Again, for all of these rule types, you just need to specify how you want to be alerted when that rule is triggered. We can monitor your pools and the different statistics available. You've got your active to ineligibility, database faults, pool sizes. Again, comprehensive performance monitoring, what you expect from a performance monitoring tool. Subsystems, do you need to make sure that your queue batch subsystem is always active? If so, you can do that using the Halcyon Performance Subsystem rule type. And finally, we can also monitor performance for the system, and again the system has its own statistics that you can monitor for. So once you've selected and added your action, the rules get added within the Halcyon product. So let's take a look at the user rules. So what kind of example rules do we have? Well, we can monitor for any disabled user profiles. It may be that you want to monitor for users with SecAdmin Special Authority. If I just F6 on here again and come into here, you can select or omit profiles. You can be specific in the user class group profiles. We can also alert you if the storage exceeds a threshold that you specify, or we can alert you if the user profile has certain special authorities. The status is where we can alert you if the user profiles become disabled. Back into the work with rules, we can monitor your distribution queue. We can monitor whether the queue depth is over a threshold or whether the queue is not ready. So for the inactivity monitor, this is a great way before you run your backups to check to see whether any interactive job is still active. You can come into the selection and say any interactive job which has been inactive for a set period, an hour for example, or the job status is a certain value. Object rules, again we can monitor the objects that are on your box. Examples that we give is being able to look at the content of a data area and check in to see whether the data area value is what is expected. It may be looking at a directory and checking to see whether it contains stream files, or even data queues where there's 10 or more items in a queue. So if I just F6, try F4, you'll see the different rule types that were available for the object selection, and then you have whether you want to check whether the object exists. You can specify the object name, type and attributes, and we can also alert you if the size has increased to a particular threshold. It may be that if there's very large objects on your iSeries that you want to be notified, so you can take a look. For every rule that you create a selective criteria and then add an action that Halcyon will perform. The restricted tasks I'll come to separately, so we'll move on to the final rules, which is work with audit journal, for which Halcyon sits over QAudJourn and reports in real time entries that are written to the audit journal. So rather than you having to go into QAudJourn and search for the audit entries, Halcyon will alert you as they are written. So that may be that rather than it go to the enterprise console, it may be that you have a security officer and it gets emailed directly to your security officer. And if I just F6 to show you the type of monitoring that we have and the rules, So when you come in to add an audit journal rule, you just come in, add the rule number and description, F4 on the journal entry type field, and then it will give you the journal entry types that you can select. Now this does include journal entry types that are only valid for V6R1, so there may be some that won't be relevant if you're running V5R3 or V5R4. Once you've selected the journal entry type that you want to monitor for, so if I just go back in and do create object, for example, I then page down, and within the criteria again I can choose to select or omit job names, users, object names, whether I want to include all the reason codes or just specific reason codes. So that's it, that's all the rules, that's all the components, that's all the monitoring and automation that Halcyon can provide to you. So if I just F12 back to the main menu, we'll just continue on the option menus that we have here. So option 10 is the green screen console. So where you have an enterprise console installed, you'll be managing the alerts from the Windows application, but if you was purely green screen, this is where you would come and manage the active alerts from within the Halcyon message console. Moving on to the next section, this enables you to go into each individual component and just work with the options that are available to that component. So if we could take a look at the Halcyon Message Manager, you'll see that it has a display message log, work with alert log, and work with monitors, and its own work with rules. So this is a subset of just the message management product itself. For each component there's a utilities menu. For this particular message manager component, we can build a message review, and what that does is it enables me to specify a message queue, and Halcyon will go off and look at the last 30 days worth of messages on that message queue, and it will enable me to review those messages and decide of those messages whether I'd like to create rules. Once the message build has been completed, you can go in and work with the message review, and this will pull back all those messages on that message queue. And from here you can choose to add a rule. So if you go down and you think, okay, I really want to know when these journal receivers have been detached, so I can just take option 1 to add a rule, and it will pre-populate that rule with all the detail that has been selected from that message ID. So it means that all you need to do is add an action to what you want to be performed when that message arrives on QSysOper in the future, and it just saves you having to type it all out yourself. Option 3 enables you to send a test message. Now, when you generate a message using this test message program, it will generate a message to the message queue, and whatever rule you have in place, it will treat it like a real message. Where we was looking earlier at being able to monitor message queues, you hopefully remember that there was a message queue called HMMFTP, and that enables you to monitor FTP activity on your IBM I, and you can stop and start that within the utilities menu by using this option 20 and 21. On each of these they'll have different menu options. So for the message communicator product, you'll see that you can work with phones, so you can add in mobile phones for SMS alerts, you can add in email addresses. We use send disk for emailing, so as long as you've got send disk configured, you can add in your email addresses and use our email action, and that will enable emails to be sent natively. As you can see here, you can also set up broadcast groups and escalation lists, and you can also work with the communication resources. So this is where the GSM is configured. So as we move through, the System Event Manager is exactly the same, and then we come to the Halcyon Performance Analyzer, and this is slightly different because although it has the subset of the alerts and system IDs, you can specify the collection levels for the performance data. So you can change the defaults that the products ship with, and then if you take option 11 to display the performance data, you can see the data on the green screen, but we also have a Performance Analyzer GUI which displays all this data in bar graphs and pie charts, and you can set thresholds so that they flash if CPU goes over a certain threshold, and that can be seen in more detail on the video for the Performance Analyzer GUI. So the next option is 24 Halcyon spooled file manager, and from within here we can work with spooled files, and it enables us either to work with our own queue, or you can press F17 to subset, so you can change the user or the output queue or specific statuses, and from here you can do ad hoc archiving, emailing, exporting, PDFing, so it enables you to be able to have the control that Halcyon can automate, but perhaps doing ad hoc PDF or emailing for individual spool files. If I take option 4 from here, where we have been archiving spooled files, they'll be shown within this option, and it'll enable you to decompress and compress archives. What we can do is we can remove the spaces from a spooled file but retain the format. So even if it's an AFP spool file, we can compress that, remove the spaces, and when we decompress it, it will look the same as when it was first produced. Again, there's system defaults for this spooled file manager. And there's a reports menu as well as a utilities menu, and from within here you can work with spool files, archive output queues, save archive files and restore them, work with subset templates, and very powerful at the bottom here, work with spool file scripts. The spool file product again is covered in more detail within the videos, so if you'd like to look at this product in more detail, please do view those. As mentioned previously with the Restricted Task Manager, this enables you to schedule tasks that can be carried out when Halcyon puts your system into restricted state. There is a video which shows in greater detail how this product works, and can be viewed from our website. Along with the Restricted Task Manager, the Halcyon Disk Space Manager is also shown in great detail within its own video available off the Halcyon website. Just finally, going on to the lower options, so option 40, that will give you the reports option. One of the reports that you won't see in the reports option, and I just jump back to the Audit Journal Monitor. Within the Audit Journal Monitor, if I go into reports, and then you'll see option 10, Print Audit Journal Entries. Within this Print Audit Journal Entries, it enables you to query over QAudJourn for any audit journal entries. You can be specific or just pick out all. So you have your reports menu. Option 41 is the utilities menu for the suite itself. So the display network log and the display action log is for overview of the actual system. Display action log is all the actions. Halcyon comes with its own journalings. Any changes made at all within the Halcyon product we can store within our journals, and that can be controlled with an F20 to start or an F23 to end. There are some system defaults so that you can control how many days you keep the journal for and how big the journal receiver is allowed to grow before it's changed. You can collect subsystem availability data, so you can turn that on and then end it, and it will show you the subsystem availability on the iSeries, and you'll also see that there's an add remove Halcyon auto start job entry. Typically when you do an installation, once the Halcyon product's installed, we recommend that the auto start job entry is added. So let's take a look at the Halcyon performance statistics. This enables you to view how Halcyon is performing. So you'll see here between 12 and 1 there was 3 console alerts, and one of those has been closed. And you can use the F7, F8 key to go between the hours, because this system hasn't been up and running for very long, there's only a few statistics. So it's a great way of being able to just monitor how Halcyon is performing with the advanced automation and system management. Option 30 enables you to dump your product data so that it can be sent into the Halcyon Technical Services if you was experiencing any issues, and option 31 is so that you can send a text message, so an SMS, via an attached GSM modem. Back down to option 42. Now this is where Halcyon is configured from installation. You can manage your authorization codes from within the Work with Authorization Codes menu. If we go into option 2, Work with User Authority, now you can add users, so if I just add myself, and you can be very specific in the functional authority that you grant to individual users. The Work with Environments option enables you to review all the Halcyon environments that you have configured. You can have multiple environments, which will enable you to run a production environment, maybe a test environment that you install the new Halcyon PTF levels to. You may have a DR or a HA environment, and by using the Work with Environments, it just gives you an overview and you can choose which is the default. Work with Remote Locations is where you can specify other iSeries and enterprise consoles that the Halcyon installation can communicate with. Work with System Defaults, this is all of the system defaults all together. So where we saw before when we were going into the individual products, we found that we could look specifically just at that product's system defaults. This is everything all in one. Halcyon ships with calendars. You can use calendars to schedule your restricted task manager task group when it's allowed to run. Work with substitution variables. This is all the substitution variables across the entire product. Again, if you want to add your own, you can do an F6 here. You can change and display these as well. Work with action schedules. We talked about them earlier on. So let's give you some examples. So what we could say is between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday, which is a typical working day for most, we want to send a console action to our enterprise console because we know that there's going to be operators monitoring the enterprise console. However, if we then say non-concurrent time, so we say 17:01 to 08:59, Monday to Friday, because that's outside of our business hour, then we perhaps don't want to be having that going to the enterprise console. It may be that we prefer it to go out to an email, or it may be that we need to send a text message, or we need to do a combination of both. Work with action templates. If you have a command action that you're always typing out and you need to use it in multiple rules, the easiest thing is to come in and just create an action template. So what you do is you give it a name and a description, and then you can type out your command. It may be a command that you have your own email application, so rather than using the send dist method that we use, there may be a send mail command that you can configure. So you can create a action template, so it just means that you don't have to keep typing out that command all the time. We're just going to move very quickly on to the final part, which is the technical information menu. Option 70. Within here you take option 1 and it will show you your current product information. So this will give you the version and PTF level that you're running, and option 2, if you're ever asked for any system details for license keys, then just go into this option, print this screen, send it over to Halcyon, and it will give us all the information required to generate you a license key. That's all for this video today. I hope it's been a great overview of the Advanced Automation Suite, and if you have any queries, feel free to contact us at technicalservices@halcyonsoftware.com. Thank you.